Hi, everybody. Good morning. This week, we will be reading about the Epstein family, a Jewish family that fled Europe in the late 1930s due to religious persecution and religious discrimination against Jewish people during the time period. We will be looking at an image of the Epstein family. Students will then be participating in a discussion activity called an anticipation guide. Students will then read the text either together as a class or using the audiobook or with a partner and responding to some discussion and reading comprehension questions. After the reading, there is a short activity where students will return to the New York City Community Health Profiles and start considering the effects of racism and discrimination on various groups of people. Finally, students can check for their understanding. This text is an excellent opportunity for students to make connections to what they are learning in their history classes and their social studies classes. There's an excellent video to provide students background information about World War II and the Holocaust, which may be unfamiliar to many of our ELs. Students can make personal connections to the topic using their academic vocabulary words, the word adapt, and how they have had to adapt to new cultures. And they could respond to whether New York City is accepting of people of different races and cultures from their experiences. So again, this text is an excellent opportunity for students to draw connections to their own personal life, to learn vocabulary words, and to also gain a better understanding of history. Now let's begin the lesson. Can somebody please read today's essential question? Good. How does where we live affect our options? Good. How does our environment affect our opportunities? Can somebody please read the first lesson objective? Good. To prepare for and participate in a range of collaborations with diverse partners. Yes, we're going to be having a lot of discussions today and working with our peers. Can somebody please read the second lesson objective? Good. To summarize key ideas and details in a text. Good. Let's continue with our do now routine. Students will look at an image and they can answer these questions. What do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder? Good. You might say, in the image, I see a man and a woman. In the image, I see a mom and a dad. I think that it is an old picture. I think that it belonged to their child. One thing I wonder is, who were the people in the picture? One thing I wonder is, where did the picture come from? Now, this is an anticipation guide activity. This is a very engaging activity for students where they will have a lot of opportunities to activate their prior knowledge and engage in collaborative discussions with their peers. For each statement, students can indicate whether they agree or disagree with the statement. In person, students can participate non-verbally by moving to either side of the room, one side representing agree and the other side representing disagree. It's important to encourage students to try to explain their reasoning, which is often challenging for many students. In addition, when doing these activities, it's important to maintain clear classroom norms so that students are sensitive to other students with different beliefs. And the key is that students are listening to each other and responding to each other respectfully and accepting people who may disagree with them. Again, the purpose for today's lesson is to read the text closely, to draw conclusions about what life was like for Holocaust refugees like the Epsteins. There are two academic vocabulary words that students will be working on this week, the words adapt and the word option. Now, in the past, Students can use a word concept knowledge building organizer in order to further develop their understanding of the academic vocabulary words. For example, the word adapt. Students may define it as change or to fit in. Students can then try to come up with a sentence using the word, such as, immigrants adapt to American culture. Maybe many of our students had to adapt to new schools or to new surroundings or to new neighborhoods. Our second academic vocabulary word is the word option. You may ask students to brainstorm what option means. Option means choice or possibility. They may also come up with a sentence using the word. I have many options of what to eat for dinner. They may also say, immigrants may not have many options for where they can live. Then students can engage in reading the text. This link will open the text. This link will open an audiobook of the text, and this will open the text itself. There's an audio recording for students to listen to, as well as the text that can be preferably read by students, but it can also be read by a teacher, or it can also be read in pairs. There's a number of important vocabulary words in the text that students can use, and many of these words will tie into their history and social studies courses. One possible strategy that can be used is to use a vocabulary chart where students can practice and build up their vocabulary skills. These are words from the text, and students can practice rewriting it, finding a picture that represents the meaning of the word to them, as well as either explaining the term, or even if they found the term in one of their assignments from social studies, they can even put that example in to show the cross-curricular connection there. Again, there's a number of discussion questions that will engage students further in the text. It's also worth noting that this text will help students build up their background understanding of history as well. Now, after the reading, students are going to return to their community connections activity. They will be visiting again the New York City Community Health Profiles. For today's activity, students will just be introduced to this week's topic of healthy living. It may be helpful to create a Google Doc for students where students can work on this doc each day. So for day one, it may be helpful to provide another copy of the text in a clear font so it's easily accessible and viewable to students. Students will then respond to 3 sentence starters. The document implies, I think that, and this reminds me of. So you can read this document and discuss it as a class, and then students can complete the sentence starters. It's important for students to be able to practice their writing, but it's also important to give them significant support when doing this. Now, this will be doable by our students as long as they have appropriate support. So what that would mean is discussing the document thoroughly, answering any questions regarding the document, as well as providing examples. And you could see students have easy access to the examples as they then try to create their own sentences. Students can even use some of the phrasing and words from the examples in order to create their own sentences. For example, the document implies. Students may say, the document implies that racism had a big effect on many people. I think that people preferred to live around others who shared their culture and background. This reminds me of how many immigrants today choose to live with people who come from the same country as them. So students, once understanding this text, will be able to respond to it. And you can use these sentence starters to help them improve their writing responses. Finally, there's a few closing and connecting activities. You can review the National Origins Act. Students can make connections to the topic and discuss how they've had to adapt in different situations as immigrants, and maybe what aspects of their native culture they kept and what aspects were changed. Students can answer this question: whether they feel that New York City has good opportunities for immigrants, is a positive place of opportunity for immigrants. And then finally, for students who may lack background knowledge and the historical context of what the Epsteins went through, you can show a short YouTube video that will help explain the historical content as well as assist them in their global studies classes. Okay, so now you can begin jumping into the text.